Hello and welcome to this MCT podcast. I'm Jonathan Brown and this is the final conversation that I'm hosting with Brian Kardon and Nick Hahn from InVision. Hi Brian, hi Nick.
Hey Jonathan.
Hello, thanks for having us back.
Yeah, great to speak again. The topic for today is the value of design. So we've spoken earlier about how so many companies now are adopting design systems, taking design seriously. Why is that? Why is design becoming an important strategic differentiator?
Well, maybe I'll start with a few thoughts. One is we're seeing that the screen is increasingly taking over our lives, and the difference between companies that succeed and fail is very often a small feature. That the barriers to switching from Amazon to Walmart to another application is very small. It's not like driving somewhere. And so we're seeing this as companies are being created, economic wealth with e-commerce. And of course, COVID has accelerated this pretty dramatically. So we're seeing that area of design and digital product design. We're also seeing that every company is a digital product company. 10 years ago, there were companies that were physical companies, but even a company that's making jet engines has sensors and digitization and monitoring and all sorts of, if I have jet engines, I want to be able to see there's a user interface and a digital experience about what is the condition? Do they need to be refurbished? Are they shaky or what's going on? So companies that thought they were in the physical business, everyone is now a digital company. And we're seeing great fortunes are made. You obviously can look at a transformation going on in certain industries, and a lot of these companies have no physical assets. We think about Marriott having a lot of physical assets. Obviously, Airbnb, VRBO, HomeAway, they have no physical assets. We're seeing that with Uber. Amazon doesn't take possession of a lot of the goods. And so a very different economic model about the user experience really being the differentiator and creating loyalty and wealth creation. So a lot of things are sort of new that are happening. And then there, of course, as we were talking earlier, there are companies that were born digital and companies that were born physical that now have to step up and really transform. Sometimes we call them laggard industries, but I think that's too disrespectful. They were very successful at what they're doing. Now they have to learn a different tune. Like they were classical musicians, now they have to learn jazz because the whole world's moved to jazz, and you have to be very successful at that. And so I think the landscape has changed pretty dramatically towards digital product design.
Yeah, that's spot on. There's it's a really interesting journey to be part of. My background is in design. I've been kind of riding this wave for nearly 20 years. And so the funny part is I've spent the majority of my career convincing people to let me do the job they hired me to do, whether through consulting, doing design consulting, or actually being a UX designer at an agency. It was always funny asking them to let me talk to users and, these things that we take for granted now because, really over the last 10 years, especially design has become, it's become table stakes. It's something that companies know they need to invest in. They're hiring, you look at job boards and job opportunities out there, every company's hiring designers as opposed to 15 years ago, only some of the leading companies would especially bigger institutional companies would be hiring designers or have a formal job role named designer, but that's standard now. And now design teams are trying to figure out how to play at the same level as their engineering peers and their product management peers. So there's a next level of maturity that's starting to happen as we get chief design officers and VPs of design at many companies. I actually don't think the line is necessarily if they're born digital or not. I think it's more, does the company value design? I've seen plenty of startups that start and grow and have big wins and they're mostly engineering focused. And then they have to catch up, and actually Google's a great example. For many years, their design was pretty poor. Their performance was phenomenal. You could use it and it was very fast, but it wasn't both good looking and oftentimes the experience was a little clunky. And they've caught up dramatically. And they started digital. I've seen other companies, I think IBM's a really phenomenal example over the last 10 or 15 years, investing heavily to hire 2,000 to 3,000 designers over the last 10 years worldwide, from having no official design titles in the whole company of 300,000 people to that massive initiative. And so there's this element of the ratio of designers to engineers, the number that I've seen quoted a lot is anywhere between 16 engineers to one designer, or 8 engineers to one designer is kind of a common ratio that's used a lot. And I've been part of teams that have been 30 or 40 engineers to one designer, or in other teams that are more like 5 engineers to one designer. And both of those have different dynamics. But as you get a larger percentage of designers, the conversation moves from, can we build the thing, to should we build the thing? And the thing that we should be building, here's how to make it really explicitly great for that user, that type of user trying to get that type of job done. So the conversation shifts from, can it be built, to should it be built?
Right. You know, Brian mentioned earlier that the companies that have a lot of physical assets, are there any companies in that category that have really transformed in terms of their ability to design?
I'm seeing, you know, it's an industry that's not doing well now, but certainly travel, leisure, airlines. It's very hard to differentiate on the room itself. It's very hard to differentiate on a seat on an airplane, but you can really differentiate on the user experience. And so we're seeing that airline apps, hotel apps, keyless check-in, all sorts of things are just really emerging as a differentiator. And some of these are winner take all. You think about the Bonvoy program at sort of the Marriott Group and Starwood together. You think about certain airline applications, like people are starting to zero in. Amazon's the best example. They have all your financial information, your credit cards. They also have a very powerful recommendation engine. And here's an effect that the more you shop, the smarter the recommendation engine gets. And so why would I go and start a new experience somewhere else? So we're seeing real monopolistic, real stickiness to a lot of these applications. You know, I could travel any airline. I'm loyal to just a couple because I'm just a sap. I love the apps. It's kind of fun. There's great gamification that sort of happens. I'm also fascinated by sort of real-time coaching or gamification in the user experience. You know, I have my little Fitbit here, and you know, I get excited when this thing starts vibrating at 10,000 steps. Like, I thought like I could get over that, but every day I need it to vibrate to say I walked 10,000 steps. I was driving over the weekend. I had about a 3-hour drive to Vermont, and I found myself wanting to set it in the mode where I wanted to optimize my miles per gallon. And so again, in coaching, it was coaching me how to get a higher miles per gallon. And so I love how design is not just how it looks, but it's actually changing my behavior. And I see that great design companies are thinking, how do we change the behavior in some fundamental ways?
You touched on something really powerful there, Brian. When we talk about design, I think a lot of our initial thoughts are both visual design and also user interface. But when I speak about design, I try to put it in the wrapper of crafting experiences, the full experience, the end-to-end customer experience. And I'm going to use Apple as an example. You know, they transformed retail, and the first time I bought something at an Apple store was mind-blowing. There's no front counter. The registers come to you. Like, they really reinvigorated the idea of how retail can work, where it is a retail environment, but you really felt like taken care of in a totally different way than you do in any other store. And that goes to show their like relentless reinvention around the experience of using their products and why their product line is so sticky. But hiring a bunch of designers is not going to get you the results. Your whole company has to live and breathe to be designers. And there's a great article by a former designer, one of the guys who worked on the iPad or iPod and the iMac. And he says it's not because Apple hires the most designers or has the best designers. It's because every person in the company thinks about user experience first. How can we improve that experience, from product owners to the executives to, you know, every individual engineer is thinking, how can we improve that experience? And that's design. And when designers don't spend time defending, why am I going to go talk to a user? And that's just naturally part of what they do every day. That's when you create great experiences and drive an immense value for the company.
I think in the last discussion we had, Brian, you mentioned an executive, was it at Goldman Sachs, who is very much a business person leading a design initiative, leading a design organization. For somebody from the business side, how do they determine how much to invest or what scale of transformation is appropriate?
They're starting to measure it in different ways. The most obvious one is through some sort of user testing, user experience testing. Well, they'll do an A/B test and let it run for a while, and they'll see if experience A, how much dollars, loyalty, engagement, time considering on the app, and experience B, and they're seeing that they can be fundamentally different. So it really moves the needle. And this allows a design leader to ask for additional resources. I will say that Goldman Sachs leader is a business person.
Yeah.
In contrast, I find it interesting that both the CEO founders of Slack and Airbnb are both designers. That is their background. So CEOs of companies, not coincidentally, that have amazing user experiences, both would describe themselves, self-described, as I'm a digital product designer. That's what I do. So they're led by people, and it just permeates the culture that they're not asking questions like how much do we sell, but they're asking questions about engagement, product adoption, feature usage. And they're not the Picassos. They are people who are data-assisted Picassos. Like, they love beautiful design, they love beautiful things, but only if it leads to greater engagement and more effectiveness of their designs.
Let's go back to the companies that are becoming digital and becoming design-oriented. We mentioned in the last conversation some banks, and I'm guessing that the senior leadership of the banks and the founders of the banks, probably it's not so common for them to come from a design background. So when they're thinking about, okay, we're going to invest in design, how do they justify that?
I'll just give you an example. So the CEO of a very large global bank, I was in a meeting with him, and he was talking about the kinds of people they're recruiting and how their business model has changed. They hire from the best business schools, MBAs. These are men and women who put on suits, they get on planes, they shake hands with people. And now they're saying that's not our business anymore because people would rather deal digitally, that it's actually a better experience than dealing with a human being.
Right.
It's actually one of the things I've coached teams on is no matter what, you're going to get it wrong. Your assumptions are going to be wrong. What you understand about the customers are going to actually, Brian, you pointed out a great example. Like, you would have put money on that. That somebody wants to talk to somebody, and that assumption was incorrect. And you've learned from that. And that's what all teams do as they go through the cycle of creating. Admitting and knowing that that's going to happen lets you go, all right, well, instead of investing in 6 months of development work before we show it to anybody, which is highly expensive. You have 16 engineers to one designer. Why not take the one designer or a small design team and iterate and test in a low fidelity way where you can throw those ideas away if they're bad ideas because you validated that they're bad ideas. So you have a choice. You can make costly mistakes towards the end, or you can make cheap mistakes up front, but you're going to make those mistakes. And that's where design comes in. It lets you make mistakes at a low risk and iterate more quickly.
The last question I wanted to put to you guys, and I think it might be a way of wrapping up, is in terms of companies becoming more mature, recognizing the value of design, recognizing the importance of, I think the analogy, Nick, you used last time of going from an artisanal craftsman approach to a, highly sophisticated production line. What do you think the indicators are of maturity that you see among your clients?
Hey Brian, I'm gonna plug one of my favorite things about InVision, and it's our new design frontier, or the design maturity model. And it's really just, I was involved with this as a third party before I joined InVision, and I thought it was just revolutionary. I still think it's a phenomenal tool. So teams oftentimes don't even know where they're at in their journey. They don't have awareness of what stage they're in, what they could do next. And this is a really great, you can go get the report, anybody can grab this, but we've talked to 2,200 companies and a bunch of different industries from all over the world. There's just so much cool data in here to kind of understand where you're at and maybe what you can do. If you look at, 3/4 of companies have improved product quality with design, right? You can see what these things, phenomenal data. It's very scientifically done. And teams that are current InVision customers, if they haven't done this, they can actually have this done with our account teams and work with them to understand where are they at in their design journey. And lots of times this data can be used to go to the powers that be within a company and say, hey, we should focus more on this. And if we invest in this, we'll get a better outcome from both a internal production standpoint from efficiencies and also customer quality.
Excellent. And that report is that on the InVision website?
Yeah, if you just search design maturity model, InVision design maturity, it'll come up.
Wow.
It's also quite prescriptive too. So there's actually a little diagnostic. You can answer some questions, and it can help you understand where your gaps are. Maybe there's not enough collaboration, or you're not getting designers involved early enough in the process, or you're not working with your front-end developers. So it identifies gaps in where you are in your maturity journey.
Wow, that's great. I think that's a really good first step for companies that are going to try to move forward and mature. So this has been an excellent discussion. Thank you so much. And in fact, all three of our discussions, I think, are going to be really valuable for the folks who are watching this in Japan. So thank you so much, and hope to speak again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you.